Welcome, everybody, to the ShopNotes Podcast. This is episode 195. Thanks for listening to today's episode. We were on a little bit of a break here as we had some traveling going on. Still have some travel going on. You'll find out about more of that in today's episode. I'm Phil, joined by Logan and John today. And we're going to talk about a new issue of ShopNotes Magazine, and then also why Logan is combining the subway with woodworking, and also found and rescued parts. So you want to be sure to stick around for that. Quick shout out to our sponsor. This episode of the ShopNotes Podcast is presented by Epilogue Laser. Quickly and easily customize your woodworking projects for added beauty and value. Learn more at epiloguelaser.com. Now, when we last left our intrepid heroes, one of them was contemplating getting an extra table saw to set up as a dedicated joinery saw in his or her already crowded workshop. So, in response to that, I had a couple of comments from that episode. Jim Carroll writes, I agree about changing the blades and the brakes on the saw stop. Great tool, but pain in the butt. Now I'm really considering a second one to do as Logan suggested, to dedicate one to ripping and crosscut and one to the dado blade. Let's see. T.G. Atkins says, in all seriousness, I think having the luxury of space to have two table saws is the dream. I would think having them back to act as the outfeed for each other, but a close second is having them side by side in the wing of a larger saw. Mm-hmm. So there you go. There's two votes in there.
The only thing with them having them back to back, do you have to have like miter gauge slots lining up so there's no interference, or I suppose you could work it out?
Yeah, it depends on how you're using the miter gauge on both pieces, because I've seen it where people will do it back to back, but then they have basically a filler piece in between the two saws that has, however the miter gauge tracks interact, so that you could have like a big sled on there and not go, bonking into the table saw on the back part.
Yeah.
Because I think unless you had the exact same model of saw back to back and perfectly aligned, you'd really only get one of those miter bar tracks aligned.
That's true.
Well, and even if you have the same model back to back, they'll be offset a little bit, which would be enough to drive my OCD crazy. Because the miter slots are not perfectly centered, and you got one wing that's smaller than the other wings. So,
yeah. After hearing Logan's proposal in the last episode, I think I'm persuaded that the side by side is probably the better option. A follow-up question that I would have on that, though, is, Logan, would you have two rip fences then?
No. I would have one.
Okay.
I would have one, even if I had the stock T-fence from the saw stop, I would still have one.
Yeah.
Because then you could actually use the backside of the fence. You could use it as a left-handed fence, right? On that right-hand saw. Because they're sharing the same rails. With my current setup, which is the Big Eye rip fence, use that same rail all the way across, and then I would just use that same fence for everything. I can actually slide that miter or the aluminum track off and put it on the backside of the fence, so I could use it as a left-handed fence if I wanted. But I would try to use the same fence for everything. I wouldn't have two fences.
Okay. I mean, if you did it with just one fence, you could have the dado side of the rip fence basically have a permanent auxiliary fence attached to it to recess for rabbits and stuff like that, right?
Yep, because that's my next sticking point is putting those on and off. Obnoxious. So yes, we're killing all the birds with this stone. Like, I don't see a downside here other than having to explain why I bought a second $3,000 saw. There's that,
Right. Okay. All right. John, where do you come down on this?
I'm all for it. It's just the logistics and the money. But
right.
I always enjoyed having 2 table saws available at our old video studio and shop. The only problem was I had to walk clear across the building to get to them, but I would do it just to not change out blades and setups.
Right.
So,
yeah. So would you do side by side or would you do back to back?
Now that Logan, like I'm picturing the way Logan mentioned it, with it's kind of in the same footprint, using the same rails, and you're just replacing the auxiliary table, whatever, to the side. I think that's a pretty good setup. I like that. It takes up the same square footage. So
just over here doing the Lord's work again.
Yeah. It's all table saw theory right now.
Right.
Right. Make it happen.
Yeah. Just innovating.
Yeah. Yeah. We're probably setting the new standard. 50 years from now, people couldn't imagine just having one saw in a single footprint.
Yeah. They're just going to sell stock double table saws.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm envisioning.
Yeah. The Saw Stop Duo or something like that, maybe, or
for couples. The love saw.
All right.
It markets itself, really.
Yeah, it does.
It does.
Really no downsides there.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Future woodworkers will look back on table saws with just nothing off to the right of one of the blades and be like, were they animals? Like, did they do cave painting too? All right.
See, now this does. I think I might have brought this up. It's been a couple weeks since we podcasted. My overarm dust collection does not work for 2 saws side by side, though. That's a potential. That's a fun problem to tackle.
Yeah.
Right.
So you'd almost need like 2 heads coming off one boom with a blast gate on one of them.
Right.
Or like a sliding telescoping type thing.
Which
so
the Saw Stop one, the Saw Stop one right now does telescope, but not far enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't get it short enough, I guess.
Right. But in the spirit of what Logan's trying to do here in minimizing the amount of changeover that needs to happen, feels like you would need to have a second overarm blade cover dust collector kind of thing. Otherwise, all we're doing, I mean, you've minimized the like blade changes and the switching out of auxiliary rip fences, but still having to swap back and forth a single overarm.
Not even.
But here's the thing, though.
Too.
The thing is, if the one second table saw is for dados and rabbits, does the overarm dust collection even matter? Because you're not cutting through cuts.
That's a valid question. That's a very valid point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. But you still have the problem of needing the cabinet dust collection. So not only do you need the theoretical overarm, which I think John's right, you don't need it. You need the cabinet dust collection. So
yeah. Living on the bleeding edge. I mean, there's
people are like watching this, like watching us work through this live.
Yeah. Yeah. This must have been what the Wright brothers were like when they were coming up with the airplane.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Logan, you are currently not in the greater Runnels Metroplex right now. Would you care to talk about your on-location setup here?
Middle of freaking New York City, Midtown to be exact.
Okay.
For all of our listeners that are in New York, I hate your city. I hate it. Because as a farm boy, there are so many people here. Like, let's be fair. It is fun to visit. I enjoy visiting New York City for about 3 days. Unfortunately, I'm here about twice that length of time. It's just a different way of life. I have a wet towel right here because I am drenched from being on the subway. I am here in New York. Family's coming later part of the week, but mainly I'm here because one of our contributing writers who's written for Popular Woodworking, since I was in college probably, Yoav Lieberman is here. He's actually in upstate Jersey, but he teaches here in the city at the Rudolf Steiner School, which is a small private school that has a wood shop. They have an interesting philosophy. A lot of their classes don't necessarily revolve around academics. They do, but it's more of a school teaching philosophy that is your mind and body are combined to create you as a person. So there's a lot of like hand classes. Yoav was telling me this morning before I made a comment about how many copper bowls there were around. He's like, yeah, we used to have a copper class where every grade would go through, and it went, first year they would do this copper project, next year they would do this copper project and stuff. So it's almost this. I'm oversimplifying this, but it's almost like a elementary through high school with a focus on crafts. That's not exactly the case, but it's a very interesting school, and it was very, very cool to spend the time there this morning and then tomorrow, seeing these classes come in and how Yoav is teaching, groups of 6 to 12 to 15 kids anywhere from 4th grade to 12th grade, hand skills. And it's all hand tools, which is very cool. Yeah. So I'm shooting some photos. What I'm envisioning is that I'm going to ask Yoav to write this, where it's like, here's what he teaches. Here are some really good projects for getting kids introduced into woodworking. And here's why he chose these projects in his school, and here's how you would teach them along the way.
Yeah.
Grandparents' Guide to Woodworking.
All right. Sounds fair.
Yeah. So, it's very cool.
I remember seeing, this was a few years ago, they would do, the school would, or probably still does, kind of a showcase of the projects that they've done. And there was one, maybe a couple of years, where I don't know if they were Yoav's or somebody else did like little carved animals, like Noah's Ark or farm animals or something like that. And I always thought they looked super cool and wanted to try doing that. So
yeah, it's one of the first projects that I think he has them do. And it's funny because this girl walks in, and it's that first class that was in there today was an 11th grade class. Most of them are working on mechanical automatrons, is what Yoav calls them. But they're basically mechanical toys. So something that has some form of animation to it. So one kid's making one of the pull behind ducks that wobbles as it's rolling.
Sure.
Couple kids were working on kind of like Chris's whirligig type things, where you turn the handle and dolphins swimming or whatever, that type of thing. Those are fun. And then there was 2 students that had just gotten in that class. They only have 2 weeks left before their summer, but there was two kids that finished up whatever class they were in previously and wanted to join. So Yoav had them kind of doing the basic, I'm putting in air quotes, carving of animals. So one kid was working on looked like a clownfish or something. And this this girl, she comes in, sits down, and grabs her block of wood and stands it up. And I look at it, I'm like, hey, that's a penguin. And she's like, you know what it is? I'm like, yeah, that's quite obviously a penguin. Like, it's just roughed out right now. But yeah, he has the little, plastic Noah's Ark toys. He's like, we throw them on the table, everybody picks one, and that's kind of their model to carve to. So she got out her little Noah's Ark penguin and was carving to it, which was super cool. He said one of the first projects that they do is a mouse, a very simple mouse. It's just this kind of a little torpedo-shaped mouse with leather ears and a leather tail. Very fun. And what that is Yoav is a very, very intelligent man. And he's taught for a long time. I think he is an architect by training. But he's like, I start off with this mouse project because this is the things it teaches them. It teaches them grain direction. They're tapering. They're learning how to make knife cuts without cutting themselves. So it's thought out every step of the way, which is really nice. And then that's the first year. And then in fifth grade they're doing walking sticks or whatever. The fourth grade class that's coming in tomorrow, that I'll be there for, they're doing walking sticks. So it's literally a 6-foot branch of a tree, perfectly straight, but it has bark on it. And Yoav's assignment to them is you guys are carving these walking sticks with a spiral. So halfway up, it starts as a spiral, and it's a fluted spiral that goes all the way to the top, and then the top has to be carved in some form of finial. So there was one kid that had this is the class tomorrow, so I don't know the kids' names, but one kid has like what looks like a little flame on it, which was really, really well done. One kid was working on a snake head. One has a bear. One has a hawk's head or eagle head on top. So they're very, very cool. It's a very. I wish I had this type of schooling growing up. Their cafeteria is really nice. I just ate in it. They have a chef. It was very cool. So. But yeah, it was very, very cool to see how he is introducing these kids from the city. Like, this is straight up like New York, and this is a private school. So, these are kids that would otherwise probably not be introduced into like this type of handwork. I made the joke as I was leaving. He's like, I have to teach most of the kids how to sweep because they've never picked up a broom in their life. So, they're learning, making the mess and cleaning up the mess and implications of certain things they're doing. So it's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
I did text my wife, and I was like, I have never felt this old in my life. Like these 8th and 11th graders are talking to each other. I'm like, I can't pick a single word up that they're saying because, man, the slang they're throwing around. It's like, oh my God.
Cool. So probably a couple of articles come out of that one.
Yeah, I'm guessing so. One for sure. Yesterday, I also went and spent the yesterday afternoon, basically from lunchtime until they closed, with the company Tools for Working Wood. Oh, okay. They're here in Brooklyn. Joel is their owner. Him and his wife own it and run it. I didn't realize how many tools they actually made in-house.
Oh, yeah.
So Gramercy is their own house line of tools. Some of them they don't make, some of their Gramercy line, just because they don't have the facilities for it. But they make a lot of their own tools in-house. Like all their spoon bits, those are all milled, heat-treated, sharpened, everything in-house.
Oh, wow.
Which I thought was nuts. And I spent the better part of probably 2 hours. I didn't see this at Handworks. I don't know how I missed it, but I get they have a folding treadle lathe.
Right.
That they are getting ready to sell. It's all aluminum. There will be a few pieces of cast iron on it for like the flywheel and stuff. But I spent some time with them kind of turning on it and taking photos of it. Just because tools for working with wood, they don't They don't advertise. They don't put their name out there. They don't really do anything. They carry a boatload of stuff. He said that he believes, and Joel didn't really have any data to back this up, but he believes that they are the largest Festool dealer in the United States.
Oh. All right.
He said because if they ship it, if they get an order today, it will be at the customer's house within 2 days.
Wow.
So it was very interesting. I did. Oh, it's right next to me. Walked away with this. One of the little thumb shaves.
Oh, the little, yeah. It's
so
a little draw knife.
Yeah, they call it their spoonmaker's draw knife. It's a thumb shave. It's actually a replica. Nah, not a replica. It's a little bit larger, but it's based on a draw knife that was found in like an Anglo-Saxon tomb in like Norway.
Okay.
So the original was slightly smaller than this. So I started with this, and then I got one of their little interesting, like it's a riffler. It's in the plastic still, but it is almost like a shoehorn shape, which I thought was kind of a fun shape. So this guy, it's only bolts right now, but they actually sell a handle kit for this as well to put 2 little 4-inch handles on it to make it like a little mini draw knife. So I got those as well, and I'm gonna make a set of handles. So, but it was very cool. I took a bunch of photos there, bunch of photos of their manufacturing process, because to me that's kind of, I mean that's the cool thing. Like Joel is a woodworker. He's designing and making tools that him as a woodworker would like. So to me, that's the type of people that I want to support because it's a small mom and pop. Joel and his wife run it. There's 8 employees total. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
And they're in the middle of like Brooklyn. Like this is 100% a reflection upon myself. I can't figure out the freaking subway system here, man. Like. Like I can get to Yoav's because it's a straight line. I walk downstairs, walk a block, and get on the subway, and it takes I know 4 stops, and I'm there. Okay, trying to get down to Brooklyn from where I'm at was like 5 different stops, 2 transfer, or it was like 5 transfers, and I'm like, screw that. So I took an Uber. It was an outrageously expensive Uber. But to me, it's very cool that they are in the middle of New York City. They're in the middle of Brooklyn. They're in this small warehouse right on the water. I mean, you walk out their door and the Statue of Liberty is like right there. Just very, very cool. So I'm going to do a little bit of print media on them as well, because it's a very cool little maker that I want to make sure that people know about.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't advertise with us. They don't advertise with anybody. It's just I want people to know about them.
Yeah, I think they used to advertise in Fine Woodworking. It seems like
they used to.
Yeah,
he said that it's probably been 7 or 8 years since they have.
Quick shout out to our sponsor. This episode of the ShopNotes Podcast is presented by Epilogue Laser. Quickly and easily customize your woodworking projects for added beauty and value. Learn more at epiloguelaser.com. Well, time to pick it back up.
I told Joel that's not my job. I'm not here to sell you ads. I'll never try to sell somebody an ad. It's not what I do.
I have a set of their, I have one of their holdfasts, their Gramercy holdfasts, which is fantastic.
He said that
is, I really like that.
He said by far that is their most popular SKU, without a
doubt. Yeah, I can see why. I also have a set of their water-based finishing brushes, which are magnificent.
I did mess with their shellac brushes, which are phenomenal, but holy buckets, they are expensive.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if the water-based one was expensive too.
Yeah, I'd have to see what the current pricing is on them, but I got my set a while ago. And I want to say at the time they were in the like $28 to $30 some dollars a brush.
Yeah,
kind of.
I think that's reasonable for a quality brush. The shellac ones were like $98 for a brush. I was like, oh gosh, ooh, put that back down. I'm so bad at cleaning my brushes. That would be a $95 throwaway thing.
Yeah. But for shellac would be perfect though, because you could just let it dry in there, and then you just soak it in alcohol, and you're on your way. So Joel said that there are companies that do. I didn't really pick up which companies they were, but he said there were companies that buy those brushes from them in like 20 or 30 brushes at a time, and then they just throw them away because it is cheaper to use one of those brushes and get a good crisp edge than taking the time to mask stuff. So like I'm picturing like people that are doing like, architectural restoration, they're shellacking trim work or something like that. Like to them, it's better to use the brush once or twice and then pitch it versus masking stuff off and spraying and all that stuff. So I don't know. All right.
Yeah. Lots of people here. Lots of people that I wish I had time to visit, but I don't before I take off again.
So are there any other woodworking related sites that you want to see or things, Okay.
Not that I would like to go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I think there's some cool pieces in there. But no, not while I'm here. There's not really. I hate trying to fight the subway, so I'm staying at my hotel in Yoavs. That's where I'm going, and I'm eating anywhere I can walk within a 20 block radius.
Right. All right. That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
I was in New York City as a little kid and remember very little of it, other than the Statue of Liberty and tall buildings.
Yeah, I mean it's like honestly, I'm kind of being a little over the top with it. It's not that bad. I truly enjoyed visiting. As I said, for like 3 days. It's just cool. I like the idea of like not owning a car, living in an apartment, and just kind of walking wherever, and I live in my little bubble. Like I kind of like that idea, but then I'm like, oh, couldn't have a shop. Definitely couldn't have a sawmill.
Can't hunt on your back porch.
Can't hunt. I mean, you can. It's just you're not supposed to shoot what's on your back porch, John.
It's frowned behind. Frowned behind.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's just rats.
Yeah.
Rats and pigeons.
Mm-hmm.
All right. John, what have you been working on?
Oh, I can't remember what we last talked about. It's been so long we've been on here, but kind of in between design projects, we finished up the clamp cart for ShopNotes, and if anybody watches our Thursday updates, Steve just kind of showed that off today, so you can see that on Facebook or YouTube. But it's got I try to kind of be a multi-purpose work cart that holds clamps and all the other accoutrements, I guess, as the French say, with the glue and like nailers and Craig jig stuff. And so it'll be kind of fun propping that out once we go to photograph it and bring it in the shop. But that's getting finished up on the build side. And what else we've been working on? Been in the studio doing TV stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah, we had Chris in last couple of days shooting some TV show segments with a tenoning jig from table saw tenoning jig from ShopNotes from years ago.
Yep.
And I think it's a pretty cool design. It was one of the we've had different iterations of them over the years. Mm-hmm. And I think this one kind of straddles the line between having an appropriate level of complexity, but is still relatively straightforward to use.
Yeah. Yeah, we've done lots of tinning jigs over the years, and this is one of them. No, it's funny because I had bought all the hardware for. I mean, it's not anything fancy, just knobs and whatever. But I bought it back when we first started doing video edition, which would have been, I don't know, 2017 or 18.
Yeah, something like that.
Or 16, I don't know. And I've just had that it's moved video studios a couple times, and it's like, hey, we should build this one. So it's just the right time.
Yeah.
So
no, I like it.
Yeah. So, and then we're doing a table saw sled as well on that episode. So start on that next week. So those are always fun. I don't know. Is this the ultimate table saw sled? Maybe.
Could be.
Just watch the YouTube video and find out.
Yeah, you be the judge. So,
yeah.
That's what I got going on.
Yeah. Nice. And then we also did an episode on an outdoor entertainment center that we're working on. Yep. That was originally from the old Workbench magazine, which was kind of fun to dig up one of their plans. So it's a heavy-duty cedar framework with some T111 paneling for doors and the panel sections. And then the original version had countertops and like a bar top counter that was done in 12 by 12 tiles. But Logan said to himself, nope.
Not today, Satan.
Not massive enough. So for the episode, we're showing casting concrete countertops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this thing has to be able to withstand the Iowa derechos and tornadoes, so we had to beef it up a little bit.
Yeah.
It's the bunker version. So
yeah, there is a safe room built inside of it,
yeah.
So you can shelter in place.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Which, for what it was, I thought that casting went really well. Mm-hmm. We showed making the forms out of what do they call it? They're like laminate panels.
Melamine.
Yeah, it's like a melamine faced,
like
3/4 inch particle board. So ripped those into strips, built a form, caulked the corners, and then John and I stood there and mixed up concrete. And I rented a mixer for it because there was a lot of bags. And yeah, poured it in, and I think we learned some things when we did it, but it turned out really well. There are a few bubble type holes in the top of it, but it's concrete. Like, what do you expect? I think in my research on doing concrete countertops, it sounds like a lot of professional concrete countertop people that pour these in houses and stuff actually will come back in and grout over the top to fill those in. It sounds like it's not. It sounds like it's not something that you avoid altogether. You can minimize them, and the smaller of the two has fewer than the big one.
I think so, yeah.
But the big one also was the first one we cast, and I think we cast that first bucket a little dry.
Yeah, I think we're learning as we go. The next one's going to be even better. So. Yeah, I was telling Phil, I just saw a video last night where somebody was doing this, and it might have been this old house or something, but they built the form the same way, but they used like a hopper gun, like you would use for like drywall texturing, to spray it on the form so maybe a little bit wetter mixture.
Yeah.
And that kind of supposed to reduce the bubbles and whatnot. So
that sounds like a mess.
Next time. Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's not like we didn't make a mess otherwise, but
that's fair. That's fair.
So
yeah, because to get ready for filming this week, I was sweeping up in the shop, and one side of the shop just sweeping along and it's just wood dust and shavings and stuff like that. And then I got to the other side and you get wood dust, and then all of a sudden the broom starts dragging a lot more, and it's like, oh, that's where the concrete dust is, because it feels very different when you're sweeping it up.
Yeah, it's fun to mix in new materials and different things with the woodworking, so keeps us on our toes.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's one of those things that not every project has to be 100% wood. You know what I mean? Like there are times where bringing a different material in makes sense.
Yeah.
So.
Right. I mean, in a sense, it's not that different than in concept from putting plastic laminate on the top of something like that clamp cart that John has, or
correct.
Like we build furniture projects that have glass panels, glass paned doors and whatever. So there's those kind of things, or incorporating acrylic or whatever. I think it's really easy from like a bumper sticker kind of view that woodworking is just working with wood. But I mean, most woodworkers have reshaped or messed around with hinges or hardware or something like that, whether it's, re-drilling holes or filing something or whatever. So it's not cutting all thread, whatever. There's a lot that's going on.
Just don't call us makers, you SOBs.
That's what I was thinking in my head too. It's like, are we makers?
No, John. No. Quiet. Nope.
Stop.
Bail.
Nope.
Bail.
Don't say it.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool. I had never seen the process in action before, and it was a lot simpler than I thought it would be. Of course, I wasn't here for when you unmolded them either, so
yeah. That was the easy part.
Just peeled right off.
Yeah.
Just flip them over and it pops right out like a cake.
Yeah.
All right, and then in the meantime, we also had an issue of ShopNotes drop. So that's why we call it the ShopNotes Podcast. Had a new issue of ShopNotes come out, which was pretty cool. I was a big fan of this one. I'm a big fan of all of them, let's be honest. But we had some really cool projects in this one. John did a workbench that was basically built to house the mechanical gear skeleton twin screw vise that Chris designed a few issues back, which I thought was pretty cool. Dylan had a French curve set that he designed that it's made up of laminations of 2 thin layers of brass and some veneer sandwiching all that together. And those had a really striking look. And I like the heft of them so that they're not going to slide around on you when you're drawing and laying out pieces. Chris did a benchtop drill press workstation. So a wall-mounted shelf with some storage for a benchtop drill press, and then a table and fence. I think, Logan, you wrote that one, right?
I did.
Yeah.
Yep. That's going to be on the upcoming season of the Woodsmith Shop as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And our photographer, Chris Hennessy, designed and built an Anvil stand for his shop. He's kind of gotten into some knife making, speaking of blending woodworking and metalworking a little bit, and wanted an anvil for that kind of work and needed a place to put it that was stout. So he came up with this really cool stand, and interestingly enough, made it mobile, which I thought was kind of ingenious as well.
He also has a big problem with roadrunners.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of Anvil, have you ever found your
No,
your
I keep
Anvil
looking.
yet?
I keep looking. I did find one that I really wanted. That was somewhere in Michigan. Now I'm not going to drive to Michigan to get it, but it was a German style anvil. So it had the double. It didn't have horn. It didn't have like a horn, but it was like a double ended anvil.
Okay.
And I feel like for the weight on it, it was like 168 pounds or something like that. The guy wasn't asking an excessive amount for it. I haven't. I kind of stopped looking. On this last batch of big machinery, I kind of stopped looking. Like, I need to pump the brakes here.
Yeah. So, what size are you looking for?
I don't have a particular size. I don't want anything less than 100 pounds. I might have said this too. I had 100 pound, 123 pound. What brand anvil did I have? It was like a Trenton anvil. And I had that, a little forge from a company in Cedar Rapids, a vintage one, and a bunch of like old files and stuff that I was going to turn into knives and whatever. That would probably have been right after I moved to Woodsmith. And then I sold it all because I wasn't doing anything with it. And it was one of those, like, I bought it because it was really cheap and I made money on it.
Sure.
So this may have been like my first order of blue spruce tools that I was trying to pay for. But no, I want at least 100 pound anvil, but I'm not going out of my way to find one right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
what's the local market on anvils? Do a lot come up? You would think there'd be a lot out there just with
crap.
Yeah, well used by farmers and metal shops.
Yeah, the edges are. So the big things you look for in anvils are cracks. You don't want to crack because that kills the rebound on it. And then you look at the edges, because a lot of times you want the edges to be nice and sharp, because you're using those to make sharp edges on whatever you're beating on, right? And a lot of times the ones we find here in Iowa are either hollowed out really bad in the center, so they're wallered out. Edges are rounded over. They have like 1.25 inch radius on the corners. It looks like somebody took a big router bit to them. Those are the biggest issues that I see. There are actually a fair number of modern anvil makers that supposedly do a really, really nice job for a rather reasonable cost. I think, like their 120 pound anvils, like $500, which, $500 is $500, but when you look at a big Arm & Hammer or a Trenton, or some of the Swedish makers of anvil, Hudson, you get a 160, 170 pound anvil. People are spending over $1,000 on them. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Can those surfaces and edges be remilled, or are they too hard at that point?
Sometimes I have seen. So if you look at, there's a YouTube channel called Fireball Tool. The guy's a machinist, I think, in Michigan. His channel's great. There was a point where he was milling an anvil face for somebody. He put it on he has a big Cincinnati vertical mill, and he put a 8-inch cutter on it, 10-inch cutter, and cut it. And just what was coming off of it looked like drips of lava as he was cutting it, which was super cool. I honestly don't think it's worth it most of the time. Most of the time when people buy a anvil that needs some attention to the surface, whether it's been, dinged up, because that's one thing, they're hardened faces, but if you sit there and you beat on the top of an anvil with a cold chisel or with a hammer, you will dent it and you will ding it. It's meant to have metal in between it and the hammer. Most of the time you'll go at them with like flap discs and angle grinders to square everything up.
All right.
So, yeah.
Cool. And then one final announcement. We've talked about it before on the show here. is the registration page is live now for our woodworking tour to England later this year in September. So Logan and I were involved in the planning process of it, and I'll be one of the, I don't know how you would describe it. It's not really a host.
That's what they're calling it. That's what they're calling it. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the hosts for this tour. It's going to be 8 days starting in London, checking out a couple of museums and some historic homes, and a chair making museum is one of the tours on, or one of the stops on there. We're also going to be Arboretum. Yes.
That was one, and the Boxwood Plantation. Like, what the crap? These are all places I wanted to go.
Right. Yeah.
You know where to buy a ticket.
Yeah. So So I'm going to be going, and then one of the editors from Fine Woodworking, Anissa Capsalis, is going to be the other co-host. So you'll be able to join us as we discover a lot of these places. I've never been to England, so it'll be a fun experience for me to learn about a different style of working wood, as well as different forms of furniture. I know that it's all kind of the same and we share common lineage in a lot of things, but as Logan is finding out in New York City, life is different in a different place. And so furniture and woodworking takes different forms. So I'm super excited to blow up my phone with all kinds of cool ideas, whether it's in somebody's shop or different types of chairs or chests or tables, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to be taking lots of photos, asking lots of questions. So I would love it if listeners from the podcast would be able to join us. It would be a cool little meetup experience as well. So I will put a link for the registration on the show notes page, and you can check out more of the details there. We're also going to be doing a joint podcast with Ben and Amanda on the Shop Talk Live podcast in a couple of weeks on a little bit more of what's going on with the tour and what we're looking forward and seeing. So want to keep an eye out for that as well. All right. There you go. This episode's been brought to you by Epilogue Laser. It's a great way to customize projects that you make, whether they're for yourself or to sell. You can check out their full range of products and available opportunities there over at epiloguelaser.com. If you have any questions, comments, or smart remarks for today's episode, you can leave them in the comments section on our YouTube channel or send us an email, woodsmith@woodsmith.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. See you next week.